Tattu sahaviryamkaravavahai tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Vishwam Darpana Dushyamana Nagari Tulyam Nijantargatam Pashyanat Manimayaya Bhairevot Bhutam Yatha Nidraya Yat Sakshat Kurute Prabodha Samaye Swatmanam Evadvayam Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye. So when we met the last time, 2 weeks ago, and in this class, if you recall, that we were talking about the viveka, the difference between parinami nityatvam and kutastha nityatvam. So we will continue to do some vichara, unfold some more vision about that. But basically, if you remember, the parinami nityatvam, such as time, space, and specific things, including you and I, are classified as parinami nityatvam. And why that is called parinami nitya is because it does change. If it would never change, it would be called nitya. There would be no prefix required to characterize it. But because we use the word parinami, that means a nitya which is not quite nitya because it does not remain the same. And I think we saw this. If not, then I can point it out again, that the reason that we can say that it is not always the same is because our experience shows, because really there is no teaching in Vedanta without our proof in our life. Proofs are absolutely important. Because otherwise you can say, this is what happens. I would say, I think Swami Dayananji used to point this out, otherwise it will be called philosophy. And I think I've mentioned it to you, that he was so clear about this distinction between philosophy and knowledge that most of us, certainly myself, were totally convinced that this is absolutely right. And for that reason, I don't know if you have ever noticed it or not, I have never used the word about the word philosophy to describe Vedanta. And the reason is that nothing that Vedanta points out is not true. And not only is it not true, it invites you, it challenges you and I to see the proof of it. This is absolutely unique in Vedanta. Please make a note of it. Just think about it. Because what philosophy is something which sounds reasonable. But may not turn out to be. If a philosophy is about something which is in fact has a proof associated with it, our experience in life also becomes the proof, then the philosophy turns into knowledge. But if you really look around and see all the proposals, all the ideas, all suggestions, all spiritual ideas and so on, they're all speculative. They're speculative both in terms of the rest of our lives in this life and then later on. Because you'll say, oh, if you believe in this, you will go to heaven. It's a speculation. And they say that if you keep on doing this samadhi and just keep on doing the pujas and upasanas and so on, then at some point in this life, you will also become free. Speculation. We have not found anyone that would say, yes, I did that, I am totally free. Actually, they might say it, but we have to see whether they really mean it or not. We have to look at that. It doesn't happen. But in Vedanta, that is not the case. So there is in fact a proof of every concept that Vedanta proposes for us. So in the case of, so this is so also for parinami nityatvam. Because I think what happens is that whatever is the subject of or the object of parinami nityatvam itself changes. How does it happen? Because the time that you have as the reference point while you are awake is a different time that you have a reference point when you are dreaming. They're different. The akasha that you see in the waking state, the sky, the space, is different in the dream state. In fact, it was interesting. I'm just finishing up. I'm so sorry that I'm just about at the end of the third volume of the Brahma Sutra Bhashya by Swami Akhandanandji. I believe this is the third time that I've done this in the last maybe 18 months or so. I don't know, somewhere in that time frame. 3 times. And every time I go back to it, I think I'll give it a little bit of a gap and then go to a couple of other books by him and by others. But I just enjoy that. Every line, every word, every concept really makes me see things that I'll say, yes, I can see that. So in the very end of this book, which I was reading, just I think this morning, on page 464, because I made a note of it, and I'm going to talk about all these in the Sailorsburg Ashram retreat. There was a very beautiful reference given by Swami Akhandananda from a Mahatma called Swami Ramatirtha, which I have heard of, but I have not really don't know much about him. I may have even read something, but I forget. But he's a very well-known figure. So Swami Ramatirtha said the following, and then when it said that, it just made so much sense. And we have already talked about it, but just to give you another way of expressing it. So Swami Ramatirtha said, listen, you cannot understand Vedanta just from your experience in the waking state. That's all he said. Just think about this. This is so true and now becomes very obvious to me and others. So obvious. You cannot reach what you want to do just from the study during, not just the study, not by analyzing your experiences in the waking world. And by the way, this is what distinguishes Vedanta from all the other schools of thought. They all talk about the so-called reality, which is what we are seeing every day in our waking world. And from those experiences, some conclusions are derived. And that's how it is. Swami Ramatirtha said, you can't do it. Anything you derive just on the basis of experience in the waking life is false, incomplete. How so? Because as we are studying in the Mandukya Upanishad, very specifically, and all the other Upanishads in one form or the other, directly or indirectly, until you start contrasting the experience of the waking state to that of the dream and the sleep state, you cannot arrive at Turiya, which is independent of all three. You cannot do it. And you cannot do it yourself. Because if it was possible, I mean, human beings have been the same for the last millennium, multi-millennium. Everybody has a 24-hour cycle where we are awake, we are dreaming, and we sleep. We come back to awake, dreaming, and sleep. So, it's very possible that some very bright, this was the dawn of the Western scientists, the German scientists and the English scientists. Newton, he discovered the law of gravity. Why? Because he was sitting underneath an apple tree and an apple fell on his head and really hurt him. And he started to think, how did that happen? Why does the apple fall down? So it appears that he has now discovered gravity. This is poppycock. Vedas have talked about gravitational forces for the last 5 million years, or something like that. So, why doesn't some scientists say, we have 3 different experiences, and I wonder what really distinguishes them. Have they ever come out with that? No. All the Western, the Freud, for example, all he said was, I'm going to interpret the experiences of a dream for you. It's suppressed sexuality or something like that. And Vedanta says you cannot, it is meaningless to analyze the contents of the dream. It is not meaningless to contrast the experience of a waking state to that of the dream state. So, Swami Ramatirtha was saying that you cannot draw the right conclusions just from the experience of the waking state. Beautiful statement. I'd never heard that before. Very obvious. So now we can draw it as to the parinami nityatvam, because you must be wondering what is the connection. Here's the connection. That who you thought was constant is not constant. Time is not constant. Space is not constant. You are not constant. I am not constant. Who I think I am in the waking state, I am not in the dream state. So how can you say that I am constant? And I completely disappear in the deep sleep state. Where is the constancy? So there is a parinama. Parinama means that it changes. So that satyatvam is changing. Apart from that, are you saying that there is no, because this is what it is. Vedanta says, please do not use independent logic without the logic provided by Vedanta, by the Vedas, the wisdom of the Vedas. You don't do it, don't. So this is, this in the sadhana panchakam, this happens. Kurtarka tyajyatam, shrutimata tarkyam anusandhiyatam. Something like that. That independent logic should be dispensed with. But a logic which is suggested by the Shruti should be thought over. Anusandhiyatam. There also the word anu is used. Anu means paschat, afterwards. In other words, you first hear it and then think about it. So for example, one of the logic that Shruti provides is you cannot have change without changelessness, my dear. This is the single point that distinguishes Vedanta from Buddhism. Single point, that's it. Buddhism says, no, we can do it. Atma is also fluctuating. Word is also fluctuating. Everything is mithya. It's all mithya. There's no reality to it and so on. Nonsense. You cannot have a change without an underlying changelessness. Try that. It's very simple logic with lots of examples and proofs and so on. So therefore, Kutestham Nityatvam. Parinami Nityatvam. First of all, it is defined to be something which is changing, and then contrasted to that because it has to be. You cannot just leave the changes and say, okay, yeah, it all changes. Okay, all right. So where have you gotten? What's the essence of it? What do you gain from changes? It is to discover the changeless behind every change. This is the message of the Kenopanishad, famous verse that we have studied, and I love it. Something we will repeat it again and again. Pratibodha viditam matam amritatvam hi lindate. Pratibodha viditam. Because the Kenopanishad says, Yasya matam tasya amatam. What is it? The one who knows doesn't know. And one who doesn't know knows. God, I remember this. This was so confusing. Even when Swami Dayanandji was explaining this, and I'm sure he did a very good job, people like me were incapable of really understanding it. And we were all writing it down. In our minds we were saying, what? What is this? What is the Upanishad saying? That one who knows doesn't know, and one who doesn't know knows? And then, after a lot of study and mananam, you begin to see, oh my God, incredible. Yes. I don't know when that happened to me, but it happened. And what Kenopanishad is saying is, and this is the same thing, I mentioned this in introducing Swami Muktatmananda. I don't know if you were there, any one of you. And I just mentioned it very briefly, that for all those experienced students, please remember, Brahma Veda Brahma Eva Bhavati. If you all have a feeling that, do I know Brahman? I've been studying it and so on and so forth. Am I done? Is this it? Is this something more? What can I do? Etc. There is a test. You don't have to ask anybody. You cannot go to a guru and say, I've been studying Vedanta for a long time, and I feel I kind of know it, but I don't know if I really know it. Do I know this? So the teacher should respond to you. You don't have to ask me. You will know it when you are Brahman. Brahma Veda Brahma Eva Bhavati. So that's the meaning of this Kenopanishad. The Kenopanishad says that if you think you know, that means you are different from what is to be known. You are a Jnata, and Brahman is Jnaya, and there is Jnanam. There is a Triputi. This is not Advaita Vedanta. This is not like, do you know a particular language? Supposing you were to know that I have a job to go to China, and I must know Mandarin, and I must be able to converse in it. I have to really, actually, that reminds me, I need to talk to Arya, my oldest granddaughter, who is in the Colby College in Maine. So when she was here about a month ago, I was just asking her, what courses are you doing and how is it and everything. So she told me this, and I need to really check this. She said, I am terrified. I said, why? What happened? She says, I'm taking Spanish. And she's taken Spanish before. It's not the only one. I think in high school also she had Spanish as one of the minors, not the, maybe a major, I don't know. So I says, why are you terrified? She says, I have to give a 1 hour funny comedy routine in Spanish. Then I understood. I said, you may be terrified. I would actually walk away from it. Even my second language, my mother tongue is Hindi, but I was brought up in Amritsar in my Punjabi grandparents. Punjabi is not all that different from Hindi, but it is somewhat different. It's a distorted form of Hindi. So, for example, they do not have, it's a simplified form of Hindi. They do not have conjunct consonants. For example, they cannot say putra. Tra is a conjunct consonant. Putra, putri. Putra means son, putri means, in Hindi, putri means daughter. In Gurmukhi, which is the script and the language in Punjabi, they will say putara. They cannot say putra. Putara, putari. They cannot say putra. Anyway, I stayed there for a number of years and started speaking Punjabi here and there, and I was pretty good at it. But if you ask me now, I've sort of forgotten. If I go to some of these Indian grocery stores where there is a Punjabi guy, my wife will tell me sometimes, hey, if you try to look, she never trusts me to do any shopping. But once in a while, if something happens, she'll say, okay, by the way, if you're going to cash and carry, just see if they have bhindi. And I said, okay, I will do that. And she says, no. If the bhindi is not the best, there is a Sikh gentleman who works there. Talk to him in Punjabi and ask him if there is some fresh bhindi on the backside, because that's what I do, she says. You got to do that. So I pick up my best Punjabi and say, what do I say? Sir, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ fresh bhindi ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ? So he's very happy that somebody is speaking Punjabi to me. And if there is, he'll say, yes, I'll bring it out for you. So I cannot even I cannot do a comedy routine in Punjabi anymore. So to know Spanish is one thing. Brahman is not like knowing Hindi or Punjabi. Because when you have a knowledge of something, you will always stay separate from it. Because in my case also, for example, I was pretty fluent in Punjabi at one time. I remember talking of Punjabi. So I was brought up in Amritsar. I was born there. That was my mother's town, and I was born there. And I stayed there until I was 14 years of age. And so I became pretty fluent at it. But I cannot really use it. I'm just repeating myself. Anyway, I've forgotten my train of thought in terms of Punjabi. Hey, I'll go to a different topic because there was something I wanted to tell and I think it just escaped me. Hopefully will come back. So the thing is that, yeah, okay, I got it. If you know something, you'll always be different from it. Even though you have imbibed in it, but now that I have forgotten Punjabi, the fluency of Punjabi, I'm still the same person, but the Punjabi is gone. So it's not as though it has become me. My Hindi is getting better actually. Just to talk about that. Anyway, I'm sorry to spend so much time on myself. Brahma Veda Brahma Eva Bhavati. So going back to Kena Upanishad, that's the beauty of that lovely Upanishad. Yasya matam tasya amatam. Now I understand. If you know Brahma, if you say I know Brahman, like I know Hindi, you don't know Brahman. Why not? Because you have a status as a person who is the knower of Brahman. So this is what Kena Upanishad discusses it in great clarity. Actually, no. The Upanishad itself is rather obtuse, but somebody who explains it can do a lot of clarity on it. And it says you cannot know Brahman because when you know Brahman, you won't say, I know Brahman. If you're a Mahatma and somebody says, Sir, have you become free? Have you become Brahman? He'll smile at you. Because if he says, I know Brahman, that means he doesn't know Brahman. If he says, I am Brahman, then you will not believe him. How can he convince you that I am Brahman? That I am become what is quote unquote realized soul, as the Western translation of moksha, mukta purusha. It's called realized soul. Just like philosophy, Swami Dayanand also never used the word realized soul. He says the only time you can use the word realized is if somebody pays you back your capital with some interest. Then you have realized your capital. But in this way, there is no realization. You either, when you are Brahman, you will know you're Brahman. You won't have to say it or anything like that. So there it talks about, this is my original thought, which I have not forgotten, is that all differences must have a basis of non-difference. And what we have to see for ourselves, what you have to see, that you are that non-difference. That is the basis of all differences in the world, good or bad. In fact, if you just recall this part, let me go on because I have some other things that I want to talk about. But then, hopefully by the end of this class, I will give you a logic for the fact that you are the non-difference substratum, adhisthana, for every change that you see in your life. I'll give you an explanation of that. I need to write it down. I don't forget it. If not, then I'll do that next time. But I think I won't forget it. But let me go on. So, what we were saying was, from last time, that we need to be able to distinguish between parinami nityatvam and kutastha nityatvam. This is what we were discussing. Let's go on and discuss and have some more ideas about what this means, because it may not be completely clear. Okay? So let's do this. In worldly teaching, in the worldly experiences, we essentially have 2 degrees of reality. Either the something is true or it is false. Right? This is how the cosmos is made out of. Either it is true or it is false. And if it is true, that also is relatively true, not absolutely true. In the world, we don't see something which is absolutely true. So we kind of assign the truth to it and then go on with it. As an example, for example, we will say this is a table. And it looks like it's true. I'm not lying. You also see it as a table. I also see it as a table. I'm knocking on it. It's made out of wood. It's a table. It's not a table. It all depends on how you're looking at it. Because if you are a physicist and you actually have a microscope, really a very strong microscope, very, very, very powerful microscope, you will find that this is not a solid substance. You will find this is a bunch of rotating protons and electrons. And in fact, this is truth. And the reason why it appears to be solid, and your hand also appears to be solid, is because of the molecular structure of this particular set of atoms that repel another body with the same charge. I mean, I'm just giving you some ideas, but this is much more to it than that. So this is, in fact, the only reason that happens is that my hand is also 99% space, table is also 99% space, and yet they cannot go through because of magnetic repelling properties of the 2 molecules. So this is not really a table. It's just, we just call it a table. Oh, I remember Swami Maheshananji had given this example. He said, supposing you say that you take out a currency note, like 100 rupee note, and you say, is this true? I'll say, yeah. Especially, if you go to India, if you have a large denomination, they will look at it light to make sure that there's not fake. But they have some ways of distinguishing. You and I cannot do it, but they've got some methods to do it. And they'll say, yeah, okay. Especially if you go with 100 and 500 to 1,000 rupee notes and so on, you will see them all doing it. They say, yeah, this is pakka. This is a 100 rupee note. Swami Maheshananji says, the government can delimit it. The same currency note, which was very valuable, becomes useless just by some decree. So a currency note, in fact, the gold is much more real than a currency note. Especially an Indian rupee outside of India is useless. People say, what is this piece of paper? I don't care, go away. I won't. You tell somebody, I want an exchange. They'll say, exchange of what? Say rupee. We don't recognize it. I say, no. It says, it's very important. 100 rupees, I earned it. No. So the reality in the world also is not absolute. That's what I'm saying. But be that as may, there are a couple of stages where you say, this is real, this is not. This is true, this is untrue. This is true, this is false. You can do that. In Vedanta, we have many more gradations than that. And we go both ways, up and down. What do we mean by that? We don't just say this is relatively true. We have to define something which is totally true. Because in Vyavahara, we can just sort of pretend, okay, let's all call this, I'm going to print all these notes, dollars and rupees, and let's just call it as money. We can do that. No, not in Vedanta. You cannot just arbitrarily decide either the thing is true or not true. So what is true? Good question. We have to define it. Truth means which does not become false under any circumstances. Anything. Time, space, anything. Doesn't matter. That is the truth. Then all you can say is, I don't see any truth like that existing. Are you just speculating? The Vedanta says no. This is I recall a statement from one of the Mahatmas that was quoted by Swami Akhandananda. Beautiful statement. He said, it is an amazing fact. It's an amazing fact that something which is the only thing which is there at all times, at all places, under any circumstance. It is not visible to anyone. My God, what a beautiful statement. You call this, this is what we say, what is the, we will spend a lot of time on this actually sometime. What is the Mahima of the Atma? This is the problem that we have in our life. You will not be what you are. You will not behave the way you are behaving. You're not going to be worried about things as you are worrying. If you knew your own Mahima. Mahima means, I don't know what the English word for that would be. Grandeur, amazing truth, the amazing quality. I don't know. Mahima means something. These words don't give justice like great, awesome. This is the latest thing that I see that. You know, that's how language changes. It's very interesting. Just a few years ago, you'd never hear at the end of the day. We had never heard of that. Somehow, language takes on a meaning, and everybody starts using it, and it takes on something new meaning at the end of the day. 10, 15 years ago, have you heard of that? At least I had never heard of that. Now, people punctuate that. And you know, there's a certain mahima to it. At the end of the day, this is really what it means. So people take notice, oh, this must be the end of the day. So something similar to that is awesome. This is something I never, when I came to this country so many years, even in the last couple of decades ago, I never heard of the word awesome. Now people say awesome. Because what happens is that you lose the... This is the misuse of words. This is what I learned from my guru, from Swami Dayanand. My God, it's not just Vedanta that I learned. It's the method of teaching, talking, not using words like philosophy, not using words without really meaning it, measuring things. Here's what a guru does. Satguru. You know, he used to say, you say something, but you know, now, what do? You have to write emails back. People send you pictures. So you have to use some word that really describes something unusual. So I think in our old days we used to say amazing. That was it. But nowadays you can't just use amazing. Amazing has become second class now. I don't know, if you have some words like these, please write to me. Awesome. It means awe-inspiring. But now, of course, we have these emojis. So people write all these, you know, they have these exclamation marks. So what I do is, I use one exclamation mark. So I don't use any emojis. So what I do is, I guess I'm old-fashioned. And I don't want to learn all these funny things and so on. So if I really want to emphasize something, I use one exclamation mark. And occasionally I'll do two. But I find these birthday greetings every day. I mean, in a large family like this, you know, somebody or the other has a birthday at least 2 or 3 times a week. And in all of them, there are 50 messages. And they all have to use words like awesome. And then the other thing is, then they have these 5 or 6 lines of emojis. What is it? How do you pronounce it? Emojis, or I don't know. Where you have flowers, roses, bells, and thumbs up marks, and you just put all of them in, that 4 or 5. Who reads this? I think that what people think is that, I saw this guy using 4 or 5 emojis. I'm going to use 10. Next time somebody does 20. Then it comes 30 of them with 5 or 6 lines. Anyway, I'm just having some fun. So, the Mahima of the Atma. So this Mahatma was saying, this is just going back to what the Mahima of the Atma is. So this is the absolute Sat. By the way, as we will see, these are all synonyms of the same Vastu. They're synonyms. You know what synonyms are? Synonym means different words that indicate the same Vastu. This is what a synonym is. Exactly the same meaning. They all resolve into, this is called Abhidheya Abhidhanam. Abhidhanam means the synonyms, and Abhidheya means the Vastu on which it is indicated. So there, the word Sat, you know what the synonym is of Sat? Atma. You know what another word for that is? Brahman. And Adi Shankara even uses the word Ishvara, Bhagavan. They're all the same Vastu. So the Mahima of the Atma, Mahima with the Sat, the pure Sat that we talked about, is just amazing. This Mahatma, whose name I forget, it was recited by Swami Akhandanandaji, he says, this is the amazing Vastu which is there. You cannot say, I used to know it, but now, it's not there. Or you describe something and you say, where? Not like that. Sakshat aparokshat. At all times, at all places, under all circumstances, by all human beings, every being, in devatas, in Swargaloka, in Patala, in heaven, in hell, if there is some place like this. It is there. Everywhere. A million years ago, same thing was there. You go to a different galaxy, you go on this SpaceX, same thing. Always there. And the most interesting part is not recognized by anyone. Incredible. So anyways, going back to the types of truth. So there is Sat. Okay. So then there's one type. Then there is another type where it is never true. Never, not possible to be true. And you can only postulate that. When people do, like, for example, a square circle, not possible. In fact, it's so interesting. Shunya. We were talking about the difference between Vedanta and Buddhism. So remember, one thing we talked about was that in Vedanta, we explain and prove, not just say it, we prove that every difference must be supported by a non-difference. So similarly, there is another distinguishing point between Vedanta and Buddhism, which says, Buddhism says that ultimately it is all shunya, zero. There is nothingness in it. And that is the happiness. There is nothing. Because all thoughts create problems. And so the best thing is to remove all thoughts. And the way to remove all thoughts, you can start meditating and all that. That's just an inferior way. You should recognize that all thoughts are just flickers. They don't really have any reality. And even the I thought, maybe not the Atma, but the I thought, is also a flicker. That also has no reality. So there is no reality anywhere. It is shunya, what they call zero. So Mahatmas say, all right, but tell me, how do you prove that this is zero? Shouldn't there be some awareness which will say, you know what, I just saw zero. So the Buddhism says, yeah, I think this is all the wise people. Finally, what's it called? They have a different word for moksha. I forget that. I knew that, but it's not coming to me. So, okay, yeah, people can see moksha, can see zero. The person who sees that it is zero, what about that person? Isn't that awareness there? Don't you see it? That even to prove zero, there has to be an awareness. We are talking about that. Anyway, going back to this gradations. So Vedanta has complete Sat, which is never not true. Complete Asat, which is not possible. A square circle is not possible. Then you have an apparent truth, which is neither Sat nor Asat, something in between. You cannot say it is there because it does not qualify the Lakshana of Sat, which must be, it is always true. It doesn't qualify. But it is there. So you cannot say it is not there. So this is what we call mithya. So Vedanta says that the whole cosmos is made up of these elements, And this is how it runs. There is a reality, and superimposed on that is a mithya. And for a while it appears to be, it's like a play, and finally it resolves back into Sat alone. This is what the whole world is all about. So this is the thesis. We'll talk about that in more later on. So this is where an understanding has to take place to really gain this. Because you can say, how do you know? Prove it to me. So we'll say, okay, I can prove it to you, provided you are qualified to understand this. I'm qualified. Don't worry about me. I can understand anything. You just tell me about it. Not necessarily, because there is in fact the truth being what it is, but it has to be understood by a person whose mind has developed a sense of discrimination, of viveka, and until you do, you won't get it. Not that it is not true, and I'm not insinuating that you won't get it, but I'm just telling you that the truth alone is not necessary. You have to understand it. And the simple example is that if a child, for example, starts with doing viveka of different colors, this is what happens. You have to tell the child, this is red, this is yellow, this is green. And it doesn't take that long. It just takes some repetition. And the child says, okay, I can now prove, I can understand this is green, and so on and so forth. Okay? But then as the child grows, you can show the different shades of the same color. They don't have to be green and yellow and blue. So you have a green which has so many different, but it takes a while, because then you can see the small shades of differences. If you look at Pammi, my wife, she's an expert in this because she has to deal with these clients that are very particular about specific colors. And she has these color palettes, all professionally done. And they have so many rows and columns with the same color. And then she can tell this is a little bit of pink, a little bit of red. To me, they all kind of look like red. You can see that in the color of the vehicles. So the Tesla red is different from the Ford red, from all the other reds. They're all slightly different. So the viveka has to be there to distinguish between them. So for example, in the case of, it's interesting, in these tea gardens, I remember this, when I graduated from my college, there were, from my engineering college, there were these recruiters from Darjeeling, a tea company in Darjeeling that were on the campus and offering us, come and join us. So I had never thought about, and I never even, but I talked to some people who were somewhat interested. These guys are highly paid. highly paid. And I says, what? I can see you're an electronics engineer or electromagnetic or something, but tea? I said, no, you have no idea. It takes years to distinguish between green leaf and this is what there's some teas that they snip off in the very beginning and they make tea out of it. Others let it grow. So there are so many shades of tea. And he says, you know what they have to go through? Anyway, this is what is called viveka. And the same thing is true of a student of Vedanta. There also, in the very beginning, there is some very simple viveka. Drik drishya viveka. Very simple. Elementary. This is like telling a child, this is green, this is blue. Drik drishya is exactly like this. The drik is the seer, and the seer remains the same. And the drishya is seen, and the scene keeps changing. And you need to know which is which. This is drik drishya viveka. But soon we have to improve our viveka. Just like in the tea garden, they have to study small things, small shades, and then they can say, no, this tea is not ready yet. The leaves are not ready to be harvested because they are slightly different. They are very precise. Similarly, we have to develop a viveka of things that are close to us. They look like us. This is what Vedanta is all about. So let's look at that. We have to use the word upadhi for this. So upadhi means something which is very close to us. Upadhi. And the ones that are very close to me seem to affect me. A very obvious example is that if somebody else's child, it doesn't affect me. But if it is my child, which is close to me, that affects me. So now let's look at this parinami nityatvam and kutastha nityatvam. Let's look at a application of that in our life. So what happens is, if you look at what is close to you, closest to you, it is your mind. As your mind is, so you are. This is an upadhi. So just like if you're wearing blue glasses, then you're going to look at things as blue. Similarly, if your mind is troubled, your world's view is troubled. If your mind is tranquil, your view of the world is tranquil. So the manaha is very close to you. The manaha as an overall category has 4 different elements to it, as you know very well from Tattva Bodha and elementary books. What are those 4? One is mana, which is the simple ability to think, to distinguish to propose, to doubt. Then the second one is buddhi. So the buddhi is the one that makes a decision, is the seat of knowledge. It knows this is my sister, this is my brother. It is not manaha, it is buddhi. This is aided by memory called chittam. Very important, because when you see a person, if your mind is functioning, you will ascertain that that person is the same one that you saw before, and that person's name is this. Now, if you're like me, my memory is starting to fade. I can see a person and I can recognize the face, but I cannot recall where I had met him before or what the name is. That is fading. So the chittam is becoming is older, it's getting faded. But anyway, that is an important faculty in this whole ecosystem of the mind. So we have manaha, buddhi, chittam. Then we have ahankara. Ahankara means the I thought. This is here, ahankara doesn't mean ego. Even though sometimes the same word is used, that you can say that person has a lot of ahankara, that means he's got a very big ego. That's not the meaning here. The ahankara just means I am. And so then really all the other three, manaha, buddhi and chittam, serve the ahankara. This is who I am. This is ahankara. Okay, got it? So now, that is what is, so when you say I thought, that means I am a living person, what is called jiva. I'm a jiva. This is a thought. Swami Akhandananda was so funny. He says, you cannot photograph a jiva. If somebody sends you a photograph and says, this is me, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Because what he has sent you is a photograph, the front end of your body, clothed body. That's all that it is. It's a replica of the front part of your body, which is clothed. It is not a photograph of the jiva. You cannot photograph a jiva. It is a thought. That's what it is. This is what is called ahankara. Now, to close off this class, I'll just end with this, but an important segment. The ahankara is like an appliance. Ahankara is like an appliance. In this context, the electricity. So the ahankara is the parinami nityam. Parinami aham. And the parinami aham is necessary to transact in this world. The kutastha nityam, which is like electricity, cannot be transacted because how can you transact it? You don't even see it, that person. There's no transaction possible. You cannot talk to anybody. You cannot respond to phone calls. All that happens is done through ahankara, the appliance. Very similar to that is the electricity cannot light up a room. Only a light bulb, which is a reflecting appliance, can light up the darkness in the room. So the ahankara is your appliance. Your I thought is your appliance. You are not the appliance. You are the one who makes the appliance work. And now I promised, if you recall, I haven't forgotten that. This is a very important thing to see. They say, you must have read this many, many times. Atma and Brahma is nirgunaha, devoid of guna. In fact, I had an email from a student some time ago. I have to reply to her. I'm really remiss. And she asked me, she says, I don't understand how Atma can be nirguna. I don't understand that. Everything else I see, there's a lot of other things I see, but I cannot see one which is devoid of quality. That you can see under the appliance and the electricity example. How? Can you say that the electricity has heat in it? Can you say it has light in it? No. Nirgunaha. Can you say it has differences in it? Abheda. Pratibodha viditam matam. Bodham prati bodham prati. In all the various thoughts, it is there. That is you. And that you is nirguna. You cannot say that the electricity is stuck with heat. No, it has the ability to do anything. You can make it cold, you can make it hot, you can make it dim, you can make it bright, anything. All that has to be done is at the ahankara level. But when the going gets tough and you want to say, who am I? You are not the ahankara. You are not the parinami nitya. You are the kutastha nitya. So hopefully we have a little bit more clarity towards that definition. So I think we have a couple of more classes and then we will wrap up this series. I'm not even sure exactly what topic I will think of some topic. And then before we go to Sailorsburg, we would wrap up this Tuesday night series of the vision and uh, promise of Vedanta. Okay? Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Oops. I got my old laptop fixed. There was some problem with the operating system and I had it repaired. I like this because it is much lighter than the other one that I had bought some time ago. And so for travel and so on, this is much better. It's a Pixel book. Much lighter than the book. Shanti Kumar, that's interesting. You had some experience with that. No, the definition of unique as Mahima or innate property does not convey what Mahima says. Mahima, you can actually look up. I'll do that. Just means the amazing quality, the awesomeness of it. In the discussion that we had, something amazing. Grandeur. That's the Mahima. Okay, very good. Good to see you. And I will hopefully see you next week. Hari Om.